In the lively village of Kirando, near the sparkling Awa River, two girls, Nia and Marama, were famous for their strong friendship. From a young age, they did everything together, laughing, playing, and sharing their dreams. Nia was clever and always quick to solve problems, while Marama's beauty and kind heart made everyone love her. The village elders often said their friendship was special, strong enough to overcome any challenge. As they grew older, their dreams grew too. Nia wanted to travel far beyond Kirando and explore new places, while Marama dreamed of spreading kindness and happiness wherever she went. They often sat under the big baobab tree, with its roots stretching deep into the ground, and promised to always support each other, no matter where life took them. One year during the Moon Harvest Festival, the village of Kirando was alive with laughter, music, and celebration. People filled the streets, enjoying the dancing, singing, and colorful market stalls. During the festival, Prince Jafari, the ruler of the great Machawi kingdom, arrived. He was a quiet man, known for his wisdom and strength, but that night, something unusual happened. His eyes stopped on a young woman in the crowd. It was Marama. Marama's cheerful laughter and graceful presence caught his attention. For the first time, the prince, known for his serious nature, felt his heart soften. In that moment, he knew his life had changed. News of the prince's interest quickly spread through the village and reached Marama's home. When Nia heard the rumors, her heart sank. She realized that Marama's life, once simple and tied to their village, was now connected to royalty. As the weeks passed, Marama's life began to change. People in the village started treating her like royalty, even before anything was official. The whispers about her marriage to Prince Jafari grew louder, filling the air with excitement. The villagers were excited, dreaming of the honor that Marama's marriage would bring to their small home. But for Nia, things didn't feel as joyful. Slowly, she felt like she was being left behind, her place in Marama's life slipping away. The close bond they had always shared now felt distant. They rarely laughed together like they used to. When Marama talked about fancy dresses, grand feasts, and the beautiful palace gardens, Nia tried to smile, but deep down, she felt something heavy growing inside her. Sadness mixed with jealousy she couldn't shake. Marama's dreams, which they had once shared under the great baobab tree, now felt like they didn't include Nia anymore. The friendship that had been unbreakable was now edgy, stretched thin by Marama's new life and her future as a prince's wife. Nia didn't know how to tell her friend how she felt. Instead, she kept her feelings to herself, even though it hurt. At night, Nia would sit alone by the river where they used to play. She would think about the times they had spent together, how they would talk about their dreams, laugh until their sides ached, and promise to always be there for each other. But now, those memories felt like distant echoes. The sound of children playing nearby reminded her of the past, but it only made the ache in her heart grow deeper. Marama's laughter, once a constant comfort, was now a haunting memory. Nia wondered if things would ever be the same again. One evening, as the sky turned a deep orange with the setting sun, Marama walked to Nia's small, simple hut. The fragrance of wildflowers from Nia's garden filled the air, and the silence between them was heavy, almost like it was saying something they couldn't. "You should come to the palace soon," Marama said, her voice warm and kind like it always was. A small smile appeared on Nia's face, but it was faint, not like the bright, carefree smiles they used to share. "I'd like that," Nia answered, but her voice was shaky, like it might break. She looked into Marama's eyes, and the kindness there made her feel a deeper ache. The space between them seemed larger, as if some invisible wall had grown without them noticing. Marama's eyes lit up with hope for a second, but then something else flashed through them, an understanding that the bond they once had was slipping away. Nia's smile shaken and faded, replaced by a tight, uncomfortable feeling in her chest. As night took over, the distance between them seemed only to grow, leaving a bitter taste that neither wanted to admit. Marama took a deep breath, the air feeling colder as darkness wrapped around them. "You know, we used to dream about days like this," she said, more to herself than to Naya, her voice soft. Nia's heart burnt at the memory, but she forced herself to nod. "Things change, Marama," she said, though it felt like a lie. The world around them seemed to hold its breath, waiting for something to shift, but neither of them knew what it would be. Nia sat alone in her small hut as the moonlight streamed in through the open window, spreading long silver streaks across the wooden floor. The night felt heavy, pressing down on her with an almost tangible weight. Her mind raced, thoughts twisting and turning like a snake coiled in a trap. Why does Marama have everything, while I am left with nothing? The question dug into her, sharper than any knife. She stood up and began to pace the room, her fingers clenching into tight fists as if to keep herself from shouting out her frustration. Memories of their childhood bubbled up, laughs shared under the sun, playful chases through the fields, dreams whispered at the edge of the forest. Those moments of joy now felt distant and tainted, replaced by a deep, troubling jealousy. A new thought started to form in her mind, bold and daring. Maybe there was a way to change things, to take what she believed was her rightful place. The idea made her pause, her heart thumping in her chest. She looked around the room, the shaky fire casting long dancing shadows on the walls. The silence pressed on her, broken only by the crackle of the flames. The weight of her thoughts threatened to drown her, but there was no turning back now. Before dawn, Nia stepped into the cool darkness, heading toward the ancient Hiran forest. It was a place wrapped in stories and shadowed by secrets, said to be the house of an old seer with powers that could heal or destroy. Her heart pounded as the forest grew thicker, the air turning cooler and carrying with it the fragrance of earth and moss. Leaves whispered as the wind moved through them, and distant weird sounds reminded her that she was not alone. The trees seemed to shift and stretch, their twisted branches reaching out, watching her with silent, ancient eyes. The path wound deeper into the woods, blurring the lines between reality and myth. Shadows danced and twisted, making her question what was real and what was imagined. Finally, she emerged into a clearing where the seer's hut sat, half hidden by the fog and the knotted roots of trees that looked like they had been there for centuries. The air buzzed with an energy that seemed to come from the earth itself, making the hairs on her neck stand on end. An old woman appeared, stepping out of the fog. Her eyes were deep and shiny like polished stones, sharp and full of knowing. It was as if she had been expecting Nia all along. "What wish do you bring to my door, child?" she said, her voice soft like the whisper of leaves but powerful enough to make Nia's breath catch in her chest. Nia's throat tightened as she forced the words out. "I wish to take Marama's place as the chosen one. I want to be the one he loves." A smile curled on the seer's lips, dark and unreadable. "Are you prepared for the price?" Nia nodded, but her heart thudded in her chest, heavy with fear. She knew she couldn't turn back now, not when she was so close to what she wanted. The forest fell silent, the air thick with waiting as the weight of her choice settled around her. The seer's eyes darkened with the understanding of what was about to happen. Without a word, she reached out and handed Nia a small glass bottle filled with a liquid that shimmered like moonlight, casting flowing reflections that danced in the early dawn. "This potion will twist destiny," the seer said, her voice dropping to a low, urgent whisper. "But remember, nothing comes without cost." Nia's fingers shaken as she accepted the bottle, its cool surface biting against her skin. The weight of what she was about to do pressed down on her, solid and unrelenting. A storm of emotions mixed inside her. Fear, hope, anticipation. But the decision was made, and there was no turning back. She turned and started her journey out of the forest, the dense trees standing tall and silent as if holding their breath. The first rays of sunlight began to break over the distance, painting the sky with hues of gold and pink. But the forest behind her seemed to stir, the branches swaying with a life of their own. The seer's voice, soft and distant, drifted on the wind. Your heart will never be the same. Nia's steps quickened, and as she left the ancient woods, she held the bottle close, its promise both a lifeline and a burden. The morning light, bright and unforgiving, seemed to remind her that this was only the beginning. Back in the village, Nia carefully prepared the potion, watching as the silvery liquid glowed with an almost terrific beauty, its light shifting and pulsing as if alive. The room seemed darker around it, as if the potion itself was drawing in the light. When Marama came by, Nia greeted her with a smile that seemed more genuine than it had in weeks, the weight of her plans hidden behind a mask of warmth. Marama's eyes brightened at the sight of Nia, and she stepped inside without hesitation, her trust still as pure as ever. Nia poured the potion into a small ornate glass and offered it to Marama, her hands steady despite the storm raging inside her. "A drink, to celebrate new beginnings," she said, her voice steady but thin, as if a shadow hung over her words. Marama accepted the glass with a smile that made Nia's heart twist, a reminder of all they once shared. "To new beginnings," Marama said, raising her glass in a toast. Nia's gaze locked with hers, and for a heartbeat, she saw the girl she had always loved. The laughter, the warmth, the light that had once been hers to share. The memory made her stomach clench, but she whispered, "To new beginnings." And the words felt like a lie caught in her throat. Marama took a sip, her eyes still bright with trust, and the silence that followed was heavy, vibrating with a strange electric energy. The room seemed to shift as Nia felt it, a shake of power that rippled through the air and set her teeth on edge. The potion was working, and with it, her destiny was starting to twist in ways she could not yet understand. The change was instant and breathtaking. Marama's body shivered, a ripple of golden light spreading across her skin, illuminating her face with a radiant glow that seemed to reach out for the world around her. Her eyes widened a look of disbelief, and fear etched into her features as the magic took hold. She gasped, but the sound was lost in the silence that fell between them. Nia's breath came out in cold, shaking whispers, her eyes fixed on the transformation. The girl she had once called her sister was slipping away, becoming something otherworldly, a shimmering figure of gold that stood still and unblinking. The warmth, the spark that had always been Marama, was fading, leaving behind a weird silence. "Goodbye, Marama," Nia whispered, her voice breaking like a broken promise. The weight of what she had done pressed down on her chest, a suffocating guilt and victory tangled into one. With shaky hands, she reached out and gently pushed the golden form toward the edge of the river. The water caught the light, turning it into a shiny ribbon as the figure fell into its embrace. The river flowed and whispered as it carried Marama downstream, the glow catching on the moonlit waves, a final, awful farewell. The night fell silent again, the only sound the soft lapping of the water against the shore. Nia stood alone, her heart a hollow echo, the taste of victory bitter on her tongue as the moon watched, cold and unfeeling. The morning sun rose over a world changed. Marama was gone and the news spread quickly, leaving the village of Kirando covered in a heavy silence. The once vibrant streets, filled with laughter and music, now felt empty, as if the joy had been stolen away. The palace, once proud and full of life, seemed to breathe sadness, the weight of it seeping into its marble halls. Prince Jafari stood in the main courtyard, his eyes scanning the crowd for any sign, any small glimmer of hope. People gathered in small, quiet groups, their voices low and uncertain. The old storyteller, an elderly man with a voice worn by age and old tales, stepped forward, his face troubled. "Your Highness," he said, his voice breaking, There is no sign of her. Jafari's eyes, dark as storm clouds, turned to the river that flowed past the kingdom. The water shone like silver under the morning sun, but its beauty now seemed hollow, as if touched by the same sorrow that gripped the land. He remembered the last time he had seen Marama, her laughter ringing out as she danced by the river, her eyes bright with the warmth of the setting sun. It was a memory now wrapped in pain. He called his guards, who gathered around him, their faces hard and determined. "Search every part of the kingdom," Jafari said, his voice low but firm. "Leave no stone unturned." The search began at dawn and stretched into the dark of night, with no sign of Marama. The moon cast a silvery light over the forest, where shadows moved like ghosts between the trees. The wind whispered of loss, and the lonely cry of an owl broke the quiet, adding to the sense of misery. Each passing day felt heavier. The court, once filled with the sounds of laughter and conversation, now felt like a grave. Servants walked with heads bowed, their voices barely above a whisper, as if speaking too loud might break the delicate silence. Jafari sat alone in his chambers, staring at the wine in his glass, its red color trembling in the flickering candlelight. His mind was a storm, full of guilt, regret, and questions that had no answers. Had he failed her? Was he not strong enough to protect the one who had given him hope? He wandered the empty hallways of the palace, stopping at the window that overlooked the river, now dark in the moonlight. He could almost hear Marama's voice, soft and sweet, calling to him, but it was just a memory, fading like a dream. The pain in his chest grew an ache deeper than anything he had known, a loneliness that felt endless. "Marama," he whispered into the night, his voice cracking. "Where are you?" The only answer was the stillness, a silence that seemed to hold both loss and a hint of hope. And as the night wore on, the weight of his despair grew, threatening to pull him under. But in the distance, just out of reach, a small, soft light flickered, as if to remind him that even in the deepest sorrow, a glimmer of hope could still shine. Nia lay restless on her small bed, staring at the wooden ceiling as moonlight streamed through the slats and cast long, shifting shadows. The quiet of her hut was broken only by the distant calls of night birds, their songs filled with loneliness and longing. Guilt pressed down on her, heavy and suffocating. The events of the night before replayed in her mind, sharp and unforgiving. Marama's laughter, the warm touch of her hand, and the promise they had whispered under the old baobab tree seemed like echoes from a life that no longer belonged to her. A sudden knock at the door pushed her straight, the sound slicing through the silence and making her heart race. Trembling, she reached for the latch and pulled the door open. Standing in the moonlight was an old man wrapped in deep purple fine clothes, the color of something ancient and powerful. His eyes were dark as coals, glowing slightly with a strange light, as if they held the secrets of the world. He spoke, his voice deep and echoing, carrying the weight of generations past. "You have bad luck," he said. Nia's breath caught in her throat, and a chill ran down her backbone. The words seemed to echo in the still night, stirring a mix of fear and recognition inside her. "Who are you?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. The old man's lips turned up in a sad, knowing smile. "I am Zuberi, keeper of the old ways. I have come because the balance has been crushed." Nia's knees went weak, and she gripped the doorframe for support. The forest outside seemed to hold its breath, and the night birds fell silent as if waiting for what would come next. Zuberi sat by the fire, the flames casting flickering shadows that danced on the walls of the small hut. Nia sat opposite him, her voice raw as she recounted everything: the potion, the moment Marama's form had changed, and the act that had left her with a soul weighed down by regret. The old man listened without interruption, his eyes fixed on the flames as if seeking answers from their restless glow. The silence that followed was as deep as the night itself, and Nia's heart drummed painfully in her chest. Finally, Zuberi spoke, his voice carrying the weight of wisdom and age. "You must seek forgiveness," he said, and his eyes glistened, as if he could peer straight into the dark corners of her soul. "But redemption is not given, it is earned." Nia's hands tightened into fists, her nails digging into her skin. The words hit her like a storm, stirring both hope and fear. "How do I begin?" she whispered, the question trembling on her lips. Zuberi rose slowly, leaning heavily on his staff. The creak of wood and the soft shuffle of his fine clothes were the only sounds in the quiet room. "The river of echoes holds the answer," he said. "It is said to mirror the truth of one's heart. You must journey to its source, where the first tears of the gods fell, and confront the shadow you have cast." Nia's breath caught in her throat, her mind racing at the thought of such a journey. The River of Echoes was a place spoken of only in the oldest legends, a mystical stream that reflected not just the surface, but the deepest parts of which one was. The idea of confronting her own shadow made her stomach shake, but in the pit of her heart, a small flicker of determination sparked to life. "I will go," she said, her voice steadier now. "I will find the river and face whatever I need to." Zuberi nodded, a look of approval softening his stern features. "Remember," he said, leaning in, "the path will be disloyal, and the truth you find may change you forever. But only by facing it will you find the redemption you seek." The fire crackled, sending a cascade of sparks into the dark. Nia stood up, the weight of her choice pressing down on her, but a strange sense of resolve settled over her. The journey would be difficult, but it was the only way forward. And so, with the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon, she set her sights on the unknown, ready to confront the shadows and seek the forgiveness she so desperately needed. Nia pushed forward, her heart weighed down by guilt. Days turned into weeks as she navigated the forest's challenges, crossing roaring rivers and climbing steep hills. One evening, she found herself at a clearing with a pool of water that seemed to glow under the moonlight. This was the River of Echoes. A spirit wolf appeared from the shadows. Its amber eyes met hers, and it spoke. "The river shows not what you wish, but what you need to see." Nia stepped forward and looked into the water. Her reflection shifted to reveal moments of regret and the consequences of her choices. The river's voice whispered, "Face the truth, and you will find peace." Tears rolled down her face as she took in the truth. The weight of her guilt pressed on her, but she knew this was the start of her path to redemption. When Nia finally reached the River of Echoes, its water glowed with a strange light, showing not just the world around it, but also the true feelings of those who looked. Zuberi's words echoed in her mind as she stepped in, the cold water seeping into her skin. The surface moved, and suddenly Marama's face appeared, eyes full of sadness and disappointment. "Nia!" Marama's voice came softly across the water, breaking Nia's heart. "What have you done?" Tears ran down Nia's face as she dropped to her knees. "I never meant for any of this," she said, her voice shaking with guilt and pain. The water shifted, and Marama's golden form appeared beneath the surface, now dim and broken. A light appeared beside Nia, and Zuberi's voice spoke again. "To fix what you broke, you must be brave. Give back what you took." Nia's heart rushed with newfound purpose. She grabbed the bottle that had started this chain of events, its contents now dull and lifeless. Standing at the edge of the river, she whispered a prayer of forgiveness, and then poured the liquid back into the waters. The river rippled, spreading light in all directions, and a powerful roar rose up, both full of sorrow and accomplishment. As the water moved, the golden form of Marama began to shift. The shimmer returned to her skin as she emerged from the river, eyes wide with disbelief and a glimmer of hope. For a moment, everything was still. Nia's chest tightened with emotion as she reached out. Their fingers brushed together, and the contact felt like the first spark of life after a long, endless night. "Nia?" Marama whispered, her voice quivering with surprise and hope. "You're here?" "I am," Nia said, her voice breaking as tears of relief streamed down her face. The weight of guilt and longing finally started to lift, replaced by the delicate promise of forgiveness and the beginning of healing. Together, they walked back to Kirando, their steps light and their hearts full. The village, once weighed down by grief, burst into joy at the sight of the two girls returning, their bond unbroken and stronger than ever. Prince Jafari stood by the river, watching the skyline with a mix of awe and regret. When he spotted them, his heart swelled with relief, warmth spreading through him. "The bond that once seemed broken is now unyielding," Zubari said softly from the edge of the clearing. He had witnessed many things in his long life, but this was a sight that would stay with him forever. Weeks passed, and the village of Kirando was full of excitement. News of Marama's returns brought happiness and hope to everyone. The streets were decorated with flowers, and the air was filled with laughter and music. Prince Jafari and Marama stood together in the middle of the village, their past struggles forgotten as they looked at each other with love and understanding. The day of their wedding arrived, and the whole village gathered to celebrate. Marama walked down the path lined with flowers, her heart beating fast with joy. Jafari stood waiting, his eyes full of tears as he watched her come. The old storyteller, now respected by all, led the ceremony, speaking words of hope and love. "Marama and Jafari," he said, "may your love be strong and never-ending. Face all challenges together and find happiness in every day." When the ceremony was over, cheers rang out, and the village celebrated with music and dancing. It was a day full of joy, and everyone felt that love had returned to their land. Marama and Jafari started their new life together, living happily and sharing their days. Nia visited often, feeling happy seeing her friends so content. Under the baobab tree where they had shared many memories, the three of them would sit together, talking and dreaming of the future. Kirando grew stronger, a village that learned about forgiveness, love and new beginnings. The story of Nia, Marama and Jafari became a treasured tale, told for generations, reminding everyone that after even the darkest night, a new day always comes. The story of Nia and Marama became a legend, a tale of love, betrayal and redemption. It was a reminder to all that even the deepest shadows could be overcome with courage and forgiveness.